I found this pottery camel with a loop on its back. It's been filled with concrete, which makes it surprisingly heavy. There are some markings on the bottom that I think read K. Haman, possibly C. Kettlewell, and a few other symbols I cannot identify. Does anyone know what it is? This is a mid-century pottery doorstop. Decorative ceramic animals like this were commonly produced from the 1940s through the 1960s. And potters often filled them with concrete or plaster to give them the weight needed to hold open a heavy door. The loop on top served as a carrying handle. The K. Haman signature points to an individual studio potter, which was typical of the era when small ceramic workshops produced functional household items by hand. Today, these pieces are collected for their charm, though many have been repurposed back into decorative shelf objects rather than working doorstops. What is this small black plastic bracket I found loose inside a used lateral filing cabinet? It measures about 60 by 40 millimeters, has the numbers 236DO-3402 stamped on it, and features a hook on one side and a 6-sided groove on the other. It was dustier than the rest of the cabinet. Does anyone know what it is? This is a component of the cabinet's anti-tip interlock mechanism. Lateral file cabinets, especially those made by manufacturers like Hahn, Steelcase, and Hirsch since the 1980s, are required by safety standards to prevent more than one drawer from opening at a time. If two heavy drawers full of files were opened simultaneously, the entire cabinet could tip forward and crush someone. The bracket you found is part of the linkage that connects the drawer slides to a central locking bar. The hooked end engages with a drawer, while the grooved side couples to the vertical rod that signals the other drawers to lock. The cabinet still opens because the rest of the mechanism is intact, but yours is now missing one safety stage. I found this small silver-colored stick in my old things from childhood. It's about 3.5 inches long, very narrow, and surprisingly heavy. I remember picking it up at an old schoolhouse on a field trip in the 1990s, and it actually writes on paper. Is it lead or silver? And what was it used for? This is a slate pencil, also called a slate stylus. Before paper and graphite pencils became affordable in the late 1800s, students wrote on small handheld chalkboards called slates, using these soft metal or stone styluses. Yours is most likely made of lead or a lead alloy, which is why it feels so heavy for its size and leaves a mark on paper. Lead pencils like this were standard classroom equipment in one-room schoolhouses across America and Europe through the mid-19th century. The version you picked up was almost certainly a reproduction sold as a historical souvenir at the preserved schoolhouse, since real lead writing tools were phased out for safety reasons long before the 1990s. What is this old wooden object? It's made of very dense wood, with clear wear from years of handling, and someone seems to have polished or repaired it over time. There are carvings on every side, and 3 angled holes drilled all the way through from top to bottom. Does anyone know what it is? This is an antique hand seed spreader from the Indian subcontinent, likely made in India or Pakistan in the early 20th century or earlier. A farmer would fill the carved chamber with seeds, then walk along a prepared row while shaking the tool. The 3 angled holes acted as metered openings, releasing a controlled flow of seed at consistent spacing as the wood was tilted. The dense hardwood resisted cracking from constant handling, and the decorative carvings were typical of regional craftsmanship, where even everyday farm tools were finished with care. The smooth polish you see is decades of contact with human hands. I found this stuck inside my vacuum tube. It's rubbery and shaped almost like a small foot, but I have no idea what it came from or what it does. Does anyone know what it is? This is a bumper for a sliding door track. It functions as a stopper at the end of the rail, absorbing the impact when the door reaches the end of its travel. The rubbery material cushions the metal-on-metal contact, preventing damage to the door, the frame, and reducing noise. These small components often pop out of their slots over time and end up vacuumed up from the floor, which is exactly how yours ended up in your vacuum tube. I have this ornate, carved and painted wooden handle that's about 2 feet long. It's ergonomically shaped, looks very old, and has through holes drilled along its length. I've photographed every side in detail. Any info on this is greatly appreciated. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a carved cart frame member, most likely from an Asian hand cart or rickshaw-style vehicle. Pieces like this were hand-carved from hardwood, then painted with decorative motifs and used as the structural rails or handles of a wheeled cart. The through holes you see were drilled to accept wooden pegs or iron pins that joined the rail to crossbars and the cart bed itself, a traditional joinery method that avoided modern fasteners. The ergonomic shaping at one end allowed the operator to grip and pull comfortably for long periods. Decorated examples like this often came from market carts or ceremonial wagons in regions of China, Korea, or Southeast Asia. I was walking near a tree when I stepped into something strange. The ground was unusually loose, and mixed into the soil were these yellow and green slimy pearls. They had no smell, glistened in the sun, and the patch was at least 6 inches deep. What is this glibbery stuff? These are hydrogel beads, sometimes called water crystals or polymer gel pearls. They're made from a superabsorbent polymer, typically polyacrylamide, that can soak up hundreds of times its weight in water. They're commonly sold for use in potted orchids and tropical houseplants, where they slowly release moisture to the roots. Someone likely dumped out a dead potted plant nearby, leaving the substrate behind. Ironically, while they look high-tech, horticulturists generally consider them poor for long-term plant health because they can suffocate roots and break down into microplastics in the soil. I found this small black plastic piece jammed inside my vacuum wand. It has a shiny outer surface, an internal-looking back, and a little rubber cup that spins. Nobody in the house recognizes it. Does anyone know what it is? It's the foot pad from an electric fan. Specifically, it's one of the rubber-tipped feet that sits underneath the base of a standing or pedestal fan to keep it stable and prevent vibration from sliding it across the floor. The shiny side is the decorative outer cap, while the rough, internal-looking side is where it snaps or screws into the fan base. The spinning rubber cup acts as a swivel grip against hard surfaces. These pop off easily when a fan gets bumped or moved, which is why they often end up vacuumed up and forgotten. What is this small beige plastic part, painted silver? I found it in my kitchen in Portugal, but we recently shipped a lot of items over from the USA, so it could be from anywhere. There are no numbers, brands, or writing on it. Does anyone know what it is? This is most likely a decorative end cap or finial from a lamp. These small plastic pieces are commonly threaded onto the top of a lamp harp to hold the shade in place, or they cap off exposed metal rods on floor and table lamps for a finished look. Manufacturers often mold them from cheap beige plastic and then spray paint them silver, brass, or bronze to match the lamp's finish. Because they're not structural, they frequently come loose during moves or cleaning and end up in random drawers, exactly the kind of orphan part that's hard to identify once separated from its lamp. I found this in my tool shed and I have no idea what it does. It's about 6 inches across, made of plastic and styrofoam with padded insides, and has a rubber drawstring around the opening. It almost looks like a strange cup. Does anyone know what it is? This is an outdoor faucet cover, also called a spigot insulator. It slips over an exterior hose bib, and the rubber drawstring cinches tight against the side of the house to hold it in place. The styrofoam core traps a pocket of still air around the metal valve, which slows heat loss during freezing temperatures. Without it, water trapped inside the spigot can expand as it freezes and crack the pipe, sometimes causing major flooding inside the wall. Homeowners in colder climates typically install these every fall before the first hard freeze. I'm tidying up my relative's house while he's in rehab, and I found this long fabric tube hanging on a closet door. It has a tight elastic hole on each end. A pin is in the picture for scale. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is an older style plastic bag holder, also called a grocery bag dispenser. These became popular in the 1980s and 1990s as plastic shopping bags from supermarkets became universal. The design is simple but clever. You stuff used plastic bags into the wide opening at the top, and the elastic cinched hole at the bottom lets you pull out one bag at a time when you need a liner for a small trash can or a bag for picking up after a pet. Many were homemade from leftover fabric scraps, which is why so many have a charming, handcrafted look. With reusable shopping bags now replacing plastic in many regions, these holders have become much less common in modern kitchens. I inherited this from my uncle, and I'm puzzled by it. It's a small, acorn-shaped capsule, possibly silver or silver-plated, lined with wood, and it splits into two fitting cylinders. The original owner was born in the Dutch East Indies and returned to the Netherlands in the 1930s. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a miniature cigarette holder, or cigarette case, designed to carry a small number of hand-rolled cigarettes or cigarillos discreetly in a pocket or handbag. Novelty cases, shaped like acorns, eggs, and other small objects, were popular in Europe from the late 1800s through the 1930s, often given as gentlemen's gifts or souvenirs from colonial travels. The wood lining served a practical purpose, protecting the tobacco from absorbing any metallic taste from the silver shell and keeping the cigarettes from being crushed. Given the owner's history in the Dutch East Indies, this was likely a personal travel accessory from that era. What is this small gray plastic fastener? It has a matching hexagonal nut that unscrews normally, measures about 1 centimeter in diameter and 1 centimeter long, and the head shows a logo with the word "if." Does anyone know what it is? It's a retail display fastener from the brand If, a company that manufactures book-related accessories like bookmarks, pencil cases, and notebooks. These small plastic screws are used in their packaging to attach the product to a cardboard backing board for store display. The hexagonal nut allows the customer or retailer to easily remove the item once purchased. You'll often find similar branded fasteners on packaging from companies that want to make their displays feel a bit more premium than a standard plastic tie or sticker. I found this wooden cylinder of mystery at my Scandinavian family home in northern Minnesota. It's roughly 5 3/4 inches long with a 2.5-inch diameter. The ends seem intentionally scored, and there's a circular indent around the middle, almost as if it was hollow and filled with a core cylinder. Does anyone know what it is? It's most likely a traditional Scandinavian butter or lefse roller, or possibly a hollow storage container known as a needle case or salt cellar. In Norwegian and Swedish folk woodworking, hollow turned cylinders like this were commonly crafted on a lathe and assembled in sections, which explains the visible grain change and the slight staining differences at the joints you described. The circular indent in the middle is often where two halves screw or fit together. To confirm, try tapping it gently. If it sounds hollow, it's almost certainly a container. Many of these were handmade by Scandinavian immigrants in Minnesota for kitchen or sewing use throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s. What are these strange dome-shaped structures scattered across a field in the UK? They're regularly spaced, each one has a hatch, and there are dozens of them stretching into the distance. Spotted while driving through the countryside. Any ideas? These are pig arks, also known as outdoor pig shelters. They're commonly seen along the A12 in Suffolk, which is one of the largest free-range pig farming regions in Britain. Each ark-shaped hut is typically made of galvanized steel or insulated panels, about 6 feet wide, and houses a sow with her piglets. The curved shape sheds rain, retains warmth in winter, and stays cool in summer thanks to airflow underneath. The hatches allow farmers to inspect the animals or seal them in during bad weather. The UK produces around 40% of its pork outdoors using this system, which is considered higher welfare than indoor confinement. I found this tubular, screw-shaped object in the Rhine River in Germany. It's about 2 inches long and 1 inch wide, made of pottery and slightly heavier than it looks. It was sitting among hundreds of pottery shards from many different eras. Does anyone know what it is? This is a ceramic wire insulator, specifically a screw-type knob insulator. These were mass-produced from the late 1800s through the mid-20th century to support overhead telephone and electrical wires on utility poles, building exteriors, and occasionally trees. The threaded shape allowed it to be screwed onto a wooden peg, while the wire was wrapped around the grooved exterior. Porcelain was chosen because it doesn't conduct electricity, resists weathering, and holds up well outdoors. As wiring was modernized and buried underground, millions of these were discarded, which is why they turn up so frequently in European rivers and the long old rail lines. What is this microwave-sized box mounted on top of a lamppost in York, England? It's near a road junction, made of plastic, and has no visible lights or markings. There's also what looks like a pedestrian detection device on the same pole. Any ideas? This is a small cell site, part of the O2 mobile network. The top box is the antenna, and the smaller units below it are the radio transmitters and processing equipment. Unlike traditional cell towers that cover wide areas, small cells boost 4G and 5G coverage in dense urban locations where signal demand is high or where buildings block larger towers. Lampposts are ideal mounting points because they already have power supply, height, and city permission for installation. A single small cell can serve hundreds of users within a radius of about 200 meters, which is why you often see them clustered near busy junctions, shopping streets, and transport hubs. What is this thin metal shield labeled as Ancient Iranian in the Leiden Rijksmuseum? Its origin is unknown, and the iconography on it doesn't match any known patterns. Does anyone know what it is? This is believed to be a Saka shield, originating from the nomadic Scythian peoples who lived in the Iranian plateau and Central Asia. Researchers suggest the thin metal surface was originally covered in leather, which would have provided the actual defensive strength. The metal acted as a reinforcing layer and decorative facing. It eventually came into the possession of the ancient Greeks, which is how it survived into modern collections, though the chain of custody erased much of its original cultural context. We're packing up to move, and I found this in the back of a closet. It's a small motor mounted on a plastic platform with a red button and a 3-prong cord. I have no memory of buying this or where it came from. Does anyone know what it is? It's a barbecue rotisserie motor. These attachments have been around since the 1950s, when companies like Weber and Charbroil began offering rotisserie kits as accessories for outdoor grills. The motor mounts to the side of the grill and slowly rotates a metal spit, typically at around 2 to 6 revolutions per minute. The red button you see is the on and off switch. As the spit turns, meat self-bastes in its own juices and cooks evenly on all sides, which is why this method is still used for whole chickens, roasts, and gyros. These white plastic bars just appeared on my kitchen counter one day in a plastic bag. They're made of ABS plastic and have best-top printed on the back. No one in the house claims to know where they came from. Does anyone know what it is? These are the support feet for a portable box fan. Most likely a model manufactured under the Best Top brand, sold throughout Asia and online marketplaces. Box fans have been a household staple since Robbins and Myers introduced the first commercial version in the 1930s. The feet snap or screw into the bottom corners of the fan housing, lifting it a few inches off the floor. This serves 2 purposes. First, it stabilizes the fan and prevents it from tipping when the motor vibrates at higher speeds. Second, it allows airflow underneath the unit, which helps cool the motor and improve circulation. They often fall off during transport, which is probably how yours ended up loose in a bag. My friend is renovating his 1920s Chicago condo and found this behind an outer wall. The hole is about 3 by 5 feet with an 8-inch metal fixture, and there's a 3-inch pipe under the floor connecting to a vertical pipe shared with other units. What was this used for? What you found are the remains of an old built-in icebox. The metal floor that originally sat above the drain pipe is missing, but the plumbing tells the whole story. In the 1920s, before electric refrigeration became standard, blocks of ice kept food cold. The upper compartment held the ice, the lower section stored food, and meltwater drained through that 3-inch pipe down to the sewer line shared by all the units. Most importantly, there was likely a small door on the exterior wall, now covered over. This let the Iceman deliver fresh blocks directly into the box from the back porch, at any hour, without disturbing the residents. The original cabinet would have been much deeper, closer to modern counter depth. I found 3 of these in one day in my driveway where we park our cars. They're bent wires with coils on each end, but the gauge is so thick the coils have no spring to them. Up on the roof, in front of that area, we have a live trap set for a raccoon. Any idea what these are? These are the trigger wires from a live animal trap. In a typical cage-style trap, these wires form the linkage between the bait pan inside and the spring-loaded door at the front. When an animal steps on the pan to reach the bait, the wire rotates and releases the door catch, dropping the door shut behind the animal. The reason yours are bent and scattered is almost certainly the raccoon itself. Raccoons have remarkably dexterous paws and often work at the trap mechanism before being caught, twisting and pulling at any wire they can reach. The coiled ends are designed as anchor loops that hook into the cage frame and the door release lever. What is this small, gray, rubbery object I keep seeing on the streets of Scotland? It measures about 20 by 10 by 5 millimeters and weighs almost nothing. On my walk to work today, I counted 17 of them on pavements, roads, and in car parks. Does anyone know what they are? These are the protective mouthpiece covers from disposable vapes. Nearly every disposable e-cigarette ships with one of these small rubber or silicone caps over the inhalation end to keep it clean and prevent accidental activation during shipping. When a user opens a fresh vape, they pull the cap off and almost always drop it on the ground immediately. Because disposable vape sales exploded across the UK from 2021 onward, these covers have become one of the most common pieces of small litter in British cities. That's also why you see them clustered near shops, bus stops, and parking areas where people unbox a new device. I found this in our junk drawer, and nobody in the house remembers putting it there. It's clear, hard plastic with the word Tupperware engraved on the side. It looks old because the plastic has gone a bit cloudy, and I can't find any other parts that go with it. Does anyone know what this is? What you found is a Tupperware Sly Saw All. This kitchen gadget was introduced by Tupperware in the 1960s as a multi-purpose slicer and grater. The clear housing you're holding is actually just the safety guard and food holder. The complete set included interchangeable stainless steel blades that snapped into a separate frame, allowing the cook to slice, shred, or julienne vegetables while keeping fingers safely away from the cutting edge. The blades were often lost or thrown out over the decades, which is why the plastic guard is usually all that survives in junk drawers today. I found this at the bottom of my dishwasher's silverware basket after running a load. It feels like silicone, it's very thin and floppy, and it has the numbers 52062-014 stamped on it. We have no idea where it came from. Does anyone recognize it? This object is known as an ASCO dishwasher strainer cap. It's a small silicone component that fits over the spray arm or drain filter assembly inside certain ASCO brand dishwashers. The cap functions as a secondary filter, flexing to allow water through while blocking food debris and small objects from entering the pump or recirculation system. Because it's made of soft silicone and only snaps lightly into place, vibration during the wash cycle can occasionally dislodge it, which is exactly how yours ended up loose in the silverware basket. Snapping it back into its housing on the spray arm will restore it to service. What are these lightweight solar-powered stakes placed along the property line in an outdoor wedding venue? Every 15 seconds they emit a loud buzz, and they're spaced about every 50 feet. There's a strict noise ordinance here, so I was worried they might be monitoring decibel levels. There's only an on-off switch on the bottom and no other markings. What could these be? It's a sonic mole and rodent repeller. These devices contain a small solar panel that charges an internal battery which powers a piezoelectric buzzer set to fire at regular intervals, usually every 15 to 30 seconds. The vibrations travel through the stake into the soil, creating ground tremors that burrowing animals like moles, voles, and gophers find intolerable, encouraging them to dig elsewhere. The pulse is marketed as inaudible to humans, but many people can actually hear the higher frequency click. They're indiscriminate, however, and can also disturb pets and other wildlife within range. I dug this up buried under a tree at my Florida home, which is over 50 years old. It's a heavy stone ball, seemingly granite, with a metal canister set into the middle. I found a second one nearby that's completely round instead of flat-bottomed. The canister slides out, but the lid doesn't seem to come off. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a granite patio lamp, a popular outdoor decoration from the mid-20th century. The heavy stone sphere acted as a stable, weatherproof base that wouldn't tip in wind or wash away in rain. The metal canister inserted in the center held fuel, typically citronella oil or kerosene, with a wick threaded through the sealed lid to produce a steady flame. The round-bottom version you found second was designed to nest into a matching stone cradle or decorative ring. These were essentially the precursors to today's solar garden lights, providing ambient evening lighting before cheap plastics and photovoltaics took over the market. What is this white ceramic object covered in small holes? The top piece is removable, but there's no cord, no switch, and no obvious purpose. Does anyone know what it is? This is a wax melt or essential oil burner. The design has been around for centuries, but the modern ceramic version became popular in the 1990s as aromatherapy took off in Western households. Here's how it works. You place a small tea-light candle inside the base, then add scented wax cubes or a few drops of essential oil mixed with water into the dish on top. As the candle heats the dish, the wax slowly melts or the oil evaporates, releasing fragrance through those decorative holes. The removable top makes it easy to clean out hardened wax between uses. My kid was digging in the garden in the north of England and pulled this up. It's a brown Bakelite-style fitting with what looks like electrical contacts inside. I told him it looked like part of an old light, but he wants more specifics. Does anyone recognize it? What you found is the internal mechanism of a Wandsworth Bakelite light switch, dating to the 1930s. Your guess about an old light was spot on. This is the working core that would have been mounted on a wall to switch a light on and off. The patent number stamped on the back, 355053, was registered in 1931. Originally, it had a circular brown Bakelite cover concealing the mechanism. Finding it buried in a remote part of the garden strongly suggests there was once an old shed or greenhouse standing there decades ago, long since demolished and forgotten. I found this in my backyard today. It's about 1 inch wide and 1 inch tall. A gray plastic round thing that almost looks like a cap with a spout. There's a flexible ring around the top that can be bent upward like a handle. The only marking is the recycling symbol with HDPE printed on it. Any idea what this is? What you found is a blowout nozzle, also called a flush cap, from a newly installed lawn sprinkler system. Here's how it functions during installation. After the irrigation crew lays all the underground piping, they pressurize the system with water before the final spray heads are attached. The water rushes through the lines and shoots out of the hole in the top of this cap, flushing out any dirt, plastic shavings, or debris left over from cutting the pipes. Once the lines run clean, the crew unscrews these temporary caps and installs the actual spray nozzles in their place. One must have been left behind in your yard. I found this in the attic of a 110-year-old home in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It's a 3-by-3-foot wooden frame with silver canvas stretched tightly over it. Very light, very old. It sounds like a drum when tapped. The canvas has a strange sawtooth edge, and it's coated with some kind of silver waterproofing. There are 2 round holes on the inside edge. It was stored with items dating from 1880 to 1945. What did this come from? This is a section of fabric covering from an early airplane, almost certainly a control surface or wing rib panel. Given your location in Kitty Hawk, the birthplace of aviation, this is a remarkable find. Early aircraft from the 1900s through the 1940s used wooden frames covered in tightly stretched linen or cotton canvas. The silver coating is aircraft dope, a lacquer that shrinks the fabric drum tight and waterproofs it, while the aluminum powder mixed in protects against ultraviolet sun damage. The sawtooth edge is called pinking, designed to prevent the fabric from fraying where it was stitched to the frame. The 2 round holes were likely inspection ports or rigging points. I was volunteering at a clothing donation store, and the staff uses this tool to pull down hangers they cannot reach. It's about 4 feet long with a silver hook attached to one end that looks like it was added later. But what was this originally designed for? This is a dressing aid, a mobility tool designed to help people with limited flexibility get dressed independently. The long handle extends the user's reach, while the hook on the end is used to grab clothing items like socks, pants, or shirts. By looping the hook through a sock and pulling, someone who cannot bend down to their feet can still put it on without assistance. These aids are commonly prescribed after hip or knee surgery, or for people with arthritis and back problems. The donation store staff repurposed it as a reaching tool, which works well because the hook grabs hanger necks just as easily as fabric. I've had one of these in my toolbox for years and just found a second one. It's marked Made in England, has a tiny indicator needle, and seems to measure up to 10/1000ths of an inch. What was this designed to measure, and how old is it? This is a vintage lever test indicator, sold under the brand name The Unique, manufactured in England during the mid-20th century. It's a precision machinist's tool used for comparative measurements on lathes, milling machines, and surface plates. Here's how it works. The small lever arm contacts a workpiece, and any deflection of that lever rotates the needle on the dial, magnifying tiny movements into a readable scale, typically graduated in thousandths of an inch. Machinists use it to set material to run perfectly true, check the flatness of a surface, or verify tolerances. While modern digital indicators exist, these mechanical units are still trusted in workshops for their durability and accuracy. I pulled this out of my dryer and have no clue where it came from. It's gray plastic, about 1 inch long, with an opening on one end. What is this little thing? This is a rubber or soft plastic aglet cap, designed to cover the tip of a drawstring on hoodies, gym shorts, or athletic wear. The opening slides over the cord end, replacing the traditional crimped metal or hard plastic aglet found on shoelaces. Manufacturers started using these soft caps in the 1990s and 2000s because they feel better against the skin, won't scratch surfaces, and give garments a cleaner, more modern look. They're glued or heat-sealed onto the cord, but laundry cycles often loosen the adhesive, which is exactly why yours ended up in the dryer. We are renting a vacation house, and I noticed these strange plastic strips glued to the hallway floor. There's one outside the master bedroom and 2 more outside the bathroom. They have anti-slip tape on top. Does anyone know what they are? These are backing supports designed to hold a runner rug in place. In rental properties, hallways often get covered with long, narrow rugs to protect the flooring and reduce noise. These plastic strips are screwed or glued directly to the floor, and the anti-slip surface on top grips the underside of the rug, preventing it from sliding when guests walk over it. The owner likely removed the rugs between rentals for cleaning, leaving only the anchors behind. They are a common solution in older homes with smooth hardwood floors, where standard rug pads aren't enough to stop movement. I was on a flight and noticed a small black triangle sticker on the cabin wall about 10 inches above my window. It's only ½ an inch tall, and I seem to be the only passenger who has one above their seat. What does it mean? This is known as the wing view marker, sometimes called the William Shatner seat indicator. It identifies the single best window in the cabin for viewing the wing and engine. If the pilots suspect an issue, such as a flap malfunction or engine fire, they ask the cabin crew to look out from this exact spot. The window aligns perfectly with the flap track, allowing crew to read the flap angle and report back to the cockpit. Boeing and Airbus both place these markers on production aircraft, and they have been a standard safety feature for decades. I found this blue plastic object in my coat pocket, and it's driving me crazy because it looks so familiar. It's about 3 inches long and 1 inch wide, hollow inside, with no text on it. It looks like it could be a valve from something, maybe camping gear? Any idea what it is? This is a hanging loop that broke off the end of a kitchen utensil, most likely a spatula, ladle, or broom handle. Manufacturers mold these loops into the end of the handle so the tool can be hung on a hook or rail for storage. They are usually made from a slightly different plastic than the main body, sometimes co-molded with rubber for grip, which is why they can snap off cleanly at the seam after repeated stress. Once detached, the loop looks like a mysterious valve or fitting because the inner channel was originally bonded to the handle shaft. I found this exposed 3/4 inch PVC pipe with a black cord coming out of my yard. The same black cord seems to reappear down the hill in my neighbor's yard and go straight back into the ground at the base of a retaining wall. It's on the other side of my driveway, nowhere near my house. Does anyone know what it is? This is a coaxial cable, commonly known as coax. The PVC sleeve protects the cable as it transitions out of the ground. What you've discovered is an underground utility run that starts at a service pole, crosses through your property, and continues to your neighbor's house. Cable installers often take the most direct route, which sometimes means cutting across adjacent properties without the owner realizing. The black jacket and shielded design allow it to carry television or internet signals over long distances with minimal interference. I found this wooden stick with a metal attachment in the basement of an old house in Germany. The metal part has holes in it and can be pushed down, and there's some kind of steel spring mechanism that pushes it back into place. Does anyone know what it is? This is a traditional laundry plunger, also called a washing dolly or laundry agitator. Before electric washing machines became common in European homes around the mid-20th century, families used these tools to clean clothes by hand. You would push the perforated metal head down into a tub of soapy water and laundry. The spring mechanism and holes force water through the fabric, mechanically loosening dirt without damaging the textiles. It was the manual equivalent of a washing machine's agitator cycle. I received this as a gift and have no idea what to do with it. It's a wooden tray that folds flat for storage, and it has salt and pepper shakers along with several small glass condiment jars, each with a tiny matching glass spoon. It looks like it's designed for a very specific food. Does anyone know what it is? This is a vintage carafe fold-away buffet server. Carafe was a mid-century American houseware company that produced these collapsible servers from roughly the 1950s through the 1970s. Despite looking specialized, it's actually a general-purpose appetizer and condiment caddy, essentially an early version of what we now call a charcuterie board. The hinged wooden frame folds flat for compact storage in a drawer, then opens up to hold the glass jars, which were intended for relishes, olives, mustards, pickles, or jams. The tiny spoons let guests serve themselves small portions. These were popular hostess gifts during the cocktail party era and have become collectible items today. I was exploring the woods near my property and stumbled onto an old concrete foundation from the 1930s. Inside, I found a pile of about 30 identical metal objects, each with a slotted attachment and a riveted hinge. Does anyone know what these are? These are scaffolding wedge clamps, also known as wedge fittings. They're a type of quick-connect hardware used to join scaffolding poles together on construction sites. The mechanism is simple but effective. The slotted piece wraps around a pole, and the tapered wedge is driven through the slot with a sharp whack of a hammer. The friction locks it tight under load. To disassemble, you just hit the wedge from the opposite direction and it pops free. Finding a pile of 30 in an old foundation suggests this site was once a staging area or storage spot for a construction crew back in the 1930s. What are these strange objects that appeared on the roadside in front of a funeral home? They're steel collars about 18 inches across with a fabric mesh sock attached, filled with what looks like ash. There are 5 of them, and they showed up right after a huge hailstorm. Any ideas? These are storm drain inlet filters, often called silt socks or catch basin inserts. The steel collar is designed to drop into a storm drain grate, with the 4 tapered tabs locking it into position. The fabric sock then hangs down into the drain itself. Their job is to catch sediment, debris, and pollutants from runoff before it enters the municipal storm water system. They're required on most active construction sites by the EPA under storm water management regulations. The ash-like material inside is accumulated silt and fine debris. A crew likely installed these for nearby roadwork or drainage improvements and will return to collect them once the project wraps up. I found this plastic object randomly in my house and I'm stumped. It's about 1.8 inches long, with a banana peel-like symbol on both halves. It looks like it should fold together like a mold, but the hinge shape actually prevents it from closing either way. The outside is textured like a tree stump. Any ideas? This is a toy piece from a Kinder Surprise egg. Kinder Surprise was invented in 1974 by Italian confectioner William Salis for the Ferrero Company, and each hollow chocolate egg contains a small yellow plastic capsule with a collectible toy inside. Many of those toys are multi-part assembly figures, and what you have is one component from a larger set, likely a tree stump base or a habitat piece that connects to other figures from the same series. The banana peel symbol you're seeing is probably the series marker that helps collectors identify which animal or character set it belongs to. The hinge isn't actually a hinge. It's a connector designed to clip onto a separate matching piece you don't have. What are these long metallic and brown plastic beams with a strange device attached to one end? It's lightweight and looks more decorative than functional. Does anyone know what it is? This is a vibro lance, a staff weapon carried by sand trooper corporals in the Star Wars universe. It first appeared in the original 1977 film A New Hope during the Mos Eisley scenes on Tatooine. The lance is wielded by Imperial troopers mounted on dewbacks to control crowds and search for fugitives. In the fictional lore, the tip vibrates at high frequency to slice through armor and flesh. In reality, this is a collector's prop replica, often produced by companies like Master Replicas, or fan-made from PVC and aluminum tubing for cosplay and display. I found this in my driveway, right under where my wife parks her car. It has a small battery, a button in the center, and an FCC number indicating Bluetooth. Is this a tracker? Should I be worried? Does anyone know what it is? Before you panic, this is most likely a Bluetooth selfie remote, also called a wireless shutter clicker. These small devices became popular around 2014 when smartphones gained Bluetooth camera support. Pressing the center button triggers your phone's camera shutter from a distance, perfect for group photos or selfies on a tripod. They're often given away as promotional items at trade shows and cost only a few dollars online. To confirm, reassemble it and open your phone's Bluetooth settings. Then press the button. If it appears as a device named something like AB Shutter 3, you've solved the mystery. What is this 5-inch pointed steel rod with a grippy middle section and a tiny scoop on one end? It's been sitting on my kitchen counter for at least 2 years. My husband and I both assumed it belonged to the other person's hobbies. Between us, we work on cars, do woodworking, play guitar, knit, and care for cats and dogs. Does anyone know what it is? It's a latte art pen, also called a coffee decorating needle. This tool is used by baristas and home coffee enthusiasts to create detailed designs on top of espresso drinks. The pointed end is dragged through the milk foam to draw fine lines, hearts, leaves, and intricate patterns, while the small scoop on the opposite end is used to lift and place small dollops of foam or cocoa powder for highlights. The ribbed grip in the middle gives you precise control for steady, fluid strokes. So while you were both blaming each other's hobbies, this tool was patiently waiting for someone to make a cappuccino. I found this washed up on a beach along the central coast of California. It feels like clay, soft and smooth, and measures about 4 to 5 inches across. It has a strange shape that almost looks intentional. Does anyone know what it is? This is the remnant of an old rubber shoe sole. After spending a long time tumbling in salt water and sand, rubber breaks down and takes on a clay-like texture as the surface degrades and softens. The tread patterns and original edges wear away, leaving behind the rounded, organic shape you see. Beachcombers find these regularly, and they are often mistaken for natural stones or pottery. Eventually, the rubber continues to fragment into smaller pieces, contributing to the microplastic pollution found on coastlines worldwide. What is this small glass tube I found with a bulb on one end filled with blue liquid? The bulb is about 1¼ inches across, and the whole thing is just under 5 inches long. There are no seams or plugs, and the liquid inside flows like water. Does anyone know what it is? This is a cooling eye globe, sometimes called an eye massager or ocular cooling wand. The sealed glass bulb is filled with a chilled liquid, usually a water and glycol mixture tinted blue. You place the bulb in the refrigerator for a few minutes, then roll it gently over closed eyelids or under the eyes. The cold glass constricts blood vessels in the skin, which helps reduce puffiness, dark circles, and tension headaches. These became popular in skincare routines in the 2010s, though similar cooling tools have been used in spa treatments for decades. What is this metal extension rod with a tiny loop at the end, sticking from the top of every power pole in this row in Virginia? They all have a small loop at the top, but nothing seems to be attached to them. The strange part is, we haven't seen them on poles in nearby areas. Does anyone know what it is? This is a mount for an overhead ground wire, also called a static shield. The loop is designed to clamp onto a thin cable that runs along the very top of the entire pole line, sitting above the energized power conductors. Its job is purely defensive. When lightning strikes, it hits this grounded wire first instead of the live lines below, channeling the surge safely down to the earth and protecting the grid from outages. The fact that you only see them on this specific row suggests it's a recent upgrade, and the actual shield wire may not have been strung between them yet. What is this large metal thing partially buried in the sandy slope at Fort Funston in San Francisco? I've walked past it twice a week for years and always wondered. My long dog is there for scale, but who knows how deep it actually goes? Does anyone know what it is? This is a piece of riveted raw steel construction, and the rivets are the key clue. This building method was phased out in favor of welding before World War II, meaning this object likely dates to around 1900 or earlier. Given the location at Fort Funston, it's almost certainly equipment from the coastal gun battery that operated on the bluff above. It could be part of a boiler, a condenser tank, or possibly a muffler housing for a backup generator that powered the artillery's searchlights and ammunition hoists. Erosion of the sandy cliffs has slowly exposed it over the decades. What is this thing I found washed up on the beach in Galveston, Texas? It's huge, maybe 20 feet long, and I'm guessing it weighs thousands of pounds. I have no idea what material it's made from. That's part of what I'm trying to figure out. Does anyone know what it is? This is a float for a dredge pipe. Dredging operations use massive pipelines to pump sand, silt, and mud from the seafloor to a disposal site, often to deepen shipping channels or rebuild beaches. Because these pipes are heavy and full of slurry, they would sink straight to the bottom. Floats like this one clamp around the pipe at regular intervals, providing the buoyancy needed to keep the line on the surface of the water. Storms and strong currents in the Gulf frequently break them loose, and they wash ashore along the Texas coast. What are these small brown pieces I keep finding all over my home? For the last few months, we've been finding just one or two at a time. They're ribbed on one side, smooth on the other, feel like plastic, and snap easily. We have a cat, but it's definitely not litter. Does anyone know what it is? These are fragments of degraded rubber, almost certainly from the sole of an old pair of slippers or shoes. Rubber compounds, especially polyurethane foam used in shoe soles, undergo a process called hydrolysis as they age. Moisture in the air slowly breaks down the polymer chains, causing the material to lose its flexibility and become brittle and crumbly. The ribbed pattern you see is the tread design. Shoes stored for years without being worn are especially prone to this, and the pieces flake off and get tracked around the house with every step. I dug this up in our backyard in the Netherlands a while back. It seems to be made out of cast iron, and it has a distinct shape with openings around the edge. Does anyone know what it is? This is the top cap of a gas stove burner. Specifically, it's the burner head, the part that sits on top of the burner base on a kitchen range. The slots, or notches, cut around its edge are flame ports, designed to channel the gas and air mixture outward in an even ring of flames around the cookware. Cast iron burner caps were standard on European gas stoves throughout much of the 20th century because the metal resists heat and distributes it evenly. It likely ended up buried after an old stove was scrapped or discarded on the property decades ago. What is this folding object, about 4 to 5 inches long? It's made of plastic with rubber coating on the ends. I got it in a watch building kit from DIY Watch Club, but the instructions never mention it. I first thought it was a watch display stand, but it does a terrible job at that. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a small folding phone stand, the kind often included as a free promotional item with kits and gadgets. It functions by unfolding into a triangular shape, with the rubber-coated ends providing grip and protection. One end cradles the bottom edge of the phone, while the back leg props it up at a viewing angle. The rubber coating prevents scratches on the screen and keeps the device from sliding off. It could also hold a small tablet. Watch Club likely included it as a bonus accessory rather than as part of the assembly process, which is why it isn't mentioned in the build instructions. What is this circular wall attachment with a small green light inside? It's about 12 by 12 inches, mounted where the wall meets the ceiling in a London Airbnb. The green light flicks on and off randomly, isn't connected to any switch, and doesn't react to motion. Any ideas? This is an emergency lighting unit. The small green LED you're seeing is the status indicator, which confirms that the internal battery is charged and the system is functioning. When mains power fails, the unit automatically switches on, illuminating the room or escape route for at least 3 hours. Under UK fire safety regulations, specifically the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order of 2005, these are required in hotels, rental accommodations, and public buildings. The green light occasionally turning off usually reflects a brief self-test cycle that the unit runs to verify the battery. I found one of these in each drinking glass in a hotel bathroom in the UK. It's a white plastic thing with bristles, super lightweight, about 3 inches long. It looks almost like a tiny brush, but I couldn't figure out what it was actually for. Does anyone know? This is a compressed disposable shower cap. What looks like plastic bristles is actually the gathered elastic edge of a full-sized cap that has been folded and pleated tightly for compact packaging. When you pull it apart, it expands into a standard waterproof shower cap large enough to cover your hair. Hotels use this format because the folded version takes up almost no space on the amenity tray, and the design lets a single cap be presented neatly next to soaps and other toiletries. Once unfolded, it can't be repackaged, which is why 2 are typically provided, 1 for each guest. I saw this noisy machine operating in a city park in southern England. It had an internal combustion engine connected by a hose to a smaller handheld device. The operator was pouring gray dust that looked like wood ash into it, and the machine was pumping it underneath the turf. What is it doing? This is an air injection soil aeration machine, often sold under brand names like the Air 2G2 or TerraLift. It works by driving a hollow probe several inches into the ground and then firing a powerful blast of compressed air horizontally beneath the surface. This fractures compacted soil without disturbing the grass on top. The gray dust you saw is typically a soil conditioner, like biochar, lime, or volcanic rock dust, which gets carried down into the fractures by the airflow. The result is improved drainage, better root growth, and healthier turf in heavily trafficked park areas. I found this small but surprisingly heavy chunk of metal in a Walmart parking lot. It's not magnetic, and although I first thought it was a fishing weight, there's no hole for a line to pass through. It's extremely dense for its size. Any ideas? This is a 5-ounce lead fishing sinker, specifically a bank or bell style sinker. The high density and lack of magnetism are the giveaways, since lead is one of the heaviest common metals and is non-magnetic. The line attachment point on these sinkers is usually a small molded brass eyelet at the top, which can break off or wear away, leaving just the lead body. Anglers use these for bottom fishing in rivers and saltwater, where the weight keeps bait anchored against strong currents. Because of lead toxicity, many regions are now phasing them out in favor of tungsten or steel alternatives. What are these strange rows of upward-pointing spikes installed along the railroad tracks? They're spaced evenly and seem to be deliberately placed. Does anyone know what they're for? These are wildlife deterrent spikes, sometimes called fauna guards. They function as a passive barrier system. When animals like deer, elk, or livestock try to step across the tracks, the uncomfortable surface of the spikes discourages them from crossing. This reduces costly and dangerous collisions between trains and large animals. The design is purely mechanical, no electricity or moving parts involved, making it a low-maintenance solution used by railways in regions with heavy wildlife traffic. My friend picked this up at an estate sale, and we cannot figure out what it does. The bottom half looks like it's meant for cooking, but the top has what appears to be an upside-down decanter. There are metal grapes and leaves all over it. Does anyone know what it is? This is a 20-inch wrought iron wine glass aerator and decanter stand. These decorative pieces became popular in the early 2000s as part of the Tuscan kitchen design trend. The way it works is simple but clever. You invert a wine glass or decanter onto the top spike, which allows the wine to slowly drain through the aerator while exposing it to air. The base, which you thought was for cooking, is actually a candle holder designed to gently warm red wines to their ideal serving temperature. The grapes and leaves are purely decorative, evoking a vineyard aesthetic. I noticed this metal pointy thing dangling from the front bumper of a car. It's shaped sort of like a cat or a heart, about the size of my fist, and it's only on one side. It reminds me of those self-defense keychains. Why is it there? This is a tsurikawa, which translates from Japanese as hanging ring. Originally, these are the plastic or metal handles that hang from the ceiling of Japanese subway trains and buses for standing passengers to grip. In the 1970s, members of the Bosozoku motorcycle gang culture in Japan began stealing them and attaching them to their bikes as trophies of rebellion. The trend spread to the wider JDM, or Japanese domestic market, car scene, where tsurikawa became a popular decorative accessory. Today, they're sold legitimately as aftermarket parts. Despite the rope or strap, they are purely cosmetic and absolutely not designed for towing. My grandfather worked for Southern California Edison, and he left this medallion to his granddaughter. It's about 1.5 inches wide, bronze in color, and it features the San Onofre nuclear generating station. It doesn't seem to be made of valuable metal. What was this given out for? This is a commemorative souvenir medallion from the San Onofre nuclear generating station, often called SONGS. The plant operated on the California coast from 1968 until its permanent shutdown in 2013, following issues with replacement steam generators. Items like this were commonly produced as keychains, paperweights, or employee tokens distributed to workers, visitors on facility tours, or attendees of milestone events like reactor startups and anniversaries. The bronze coloring suggests it's a base metal alloy, not precious. While it has little monetary value, it's a genuine piece of nuclear industry memorabilia from a plant that powered millions of Southern California homes for over 4 decades. I found this heavy metal object during a renovation of a 1968 house. It's about 8.5 by 5.5 inches and weighs around 5 pounds. The centerpiece slides in from the back with a hole for a wooden handle. There's a lot of slack around a ball joint, and bolt holes on the sides. How does it work? This is a scrubber head, specifically the type used for cleaning wooden ship decking. Traditional wooden decks on naval and merchant vessels required daily scrubbing with a coarse sandstone block called a holystone, and tools like this held the stone or a stiff brush against the planks. The heavy weight is intentional. It applies downward pressure, so the sailor only has to push the handle back and forth rather than pressing down. The ball joint in the center gives the head freedom to pivot in all directions, letting it stay flat against the deck even as the long wooden handle moves at an angle. The bolt holes secured the abrasive block or brush pad underneath, which could be replaced as it wore down. What is this metallic thing mounted above my door? It's about 17 inches in diameter and has a small rod sticking out that buzzes when you touch it, or whenever the power cuts out and comes back on. It's been here as long as I can remember, and the house was built in the 1950s. Any ideas what it could be? This object is known as an electromechanical bell, and it's missing its outer metal dome cover. Here's how it works. The rod you see is an electromagnetic striker. When electrical current flows through the coil, the magnetic field pulls the rod upward and holds it there. The moment the power is interrupted, the magnetic field collapses and the rod drops down, striking the bell housing to produce a loud ring. Since your bell cover is missing, the striker has nothing to hit, which is why you only hear that faint buzz during power fluctuations. These were common in mid-century homes as fire alarms or service call bells. I found this semi-translucent piece of hard rubber laying around the house. It's about the size of half a banana, very flexible, but it doesn't stretch. I keep thinking it must belong to something I own, but I can't figure out what. Does anyone know what this is? This is a triangle holder from a children's musical instrument set. The small rubber loop is designed to suspend a metal percussion triangle, allowing it to ring freely when struck with a beater. The flexible yet non-stretchy rubber is the key to its function. It isolates the triangle from the hand holding it, preventing vibrations from being dampened. Without that isolation, the metal would produce a dull thud instead of a clear, sustained tone. These holders are commonly lost from cheap toy sets, which is why the parent piece is nowhere to be found. What is this large wooden contraption found in an antique store? It's about 3 feet across with 1 or 2 moving parts. There's writing stamped on it reading WD34 H097 3510HG and 2 1/4 DIA. The top centerpiece appears to rotate about 40 degrees. Does anyone know what it is? This is a foundry pattern, a wooden master used to create molds for casting metal parts. Pattern makers carved these shapes from hardwood, then pressed them into sand to leave an impression. Molten metal would then be poured into the cavity to produce the final metal component. The markings make sense in this context. The notation 2 1/4 DIA refers to a diameter specification, and the alphanumeric codes are inventory or job numbers used by the foundry. The moving parts allowed sections to pivot out of the sand without damaging the mold. These wooden patterns became collectible folk art after CNC machining replaced sand casting for most production work. My robot vacuum sucked up a small bag, and inside were these gray plastic clips. 3 are labeled M and 3 are labeled L. The medium ones are exactly 1 inch long. The large ones are 1 1/8 inches. Does anyone know what they are? These are replacement nose bridges for swimming goggles. Most competition and lap swim goggles, like models from Speedo, TYR, and Arena, come with 2 separate eye cups connected by an interchangeable nose piece. The medium and large markings let you swap in the correct size to match the distance between your eyes, ensuring a leak-proof seal. Swimmers carry spares because the small plastic bridges are easy to lose and tend to wear out faster than the eye cups themselves. A full set like this typically ships in the box with a new pair of goggles. I have this 10-inch tall ceramic object that looks hand-painted. The top has several small holes, and the base has a rubber stopper. I thought it might be an incense burner or a vase, but nothing fits. Does anyone know what it is? This is a sugar shaker made by Mackenzie Childs, an American home goods company founded in 1983 in Aurora, New York, known for whimsical hand-painted ceramics. Here's how it works. You remove the rubber stopper on the bottom, fill the body with granulated sugar, replace the stopper, and then sprinkle sugar through the small holes on top, typically over baked goods, fruit, or coffee. The decorative shape and hand-painted finish make it more of a display piece than everyday kitchenware, and these shakers often sell for over $100 on the secondary market. Which of these items surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. For more unknown items, check out the other videos on our channel. Hit like and subscribe.